talk to him on the phone. He should be in the queue.
I don't. I've got a David by just the first name, but I don't see a Leider.
That should be
That's
David
me.
Leider then, I think. I mean, we do have Dave Hartwell, but
That is me.
okay.
I'm trying to get my presentation here.
Okay.
All right, I'll go silent.
And I will introduce everybody to David. David just recently moved from the northwestern suburbs of Chicago to Florida, and he's a lifelong Soo Line fan. Has written many articles about the Soo Line for the Soo Line Historical and Technical Society magazine. He's also the president of the society and a modeler, and of the Soo Line, and he loves to research old railroads, and he loves to research old railroads and the industries they serve, especially those around Chicago. The B&O CT History is the 4th book he has produced. He is going to speak about his experiences writing the book and why he did it. And I will point out that he did do research at the B&O archives in Eldersburg for his book. And he will talk also, will also mention that his book will be on sale from the company store. And so I'll let David start his presentation now. And we want to welcome David, and also mention that he has just written a very good article. I can't remember the name of the individual in the Chicago and Northwestern Historical Society magazine of a employee who took a number of pictures and worked in the signal department. So David, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. The article was about Charles Stetcher, and he was an interesting individual because he worked for the Northwestern, and he went around the country taking pictures and then showing the men the intricacies of the signal system on the railroad. And I used one of the photos in the B&O CT book, so that's kind of a tie-in. But anyway, let's see, this is not the history of the B&O CT. I'm going to present that at the October 3rd virtual annual meeting. And this is kind of something I've never done before, a presentation like this, but it's my thoughts and motives behind why I wrote this book, in case anybody is interested. Here's an interesting map from the timetable of May 24, 1949. And if you notice, at that time, or actually by that time, they had not, the Chicago and Alton had been sold to the GM&O. But anyway, it shows a pretty good representation of the B&O CT. The dashed lines are trackage rights, but you can see how this is Chicago, obviously, and how it kind of encircled the entire area. Why write a book? Number one, no one has come close to writing the history of the B&O CT. It's usually one chapter in a larger book. It's a very interesting story. I mean, I was amazed at how intricate the story is when I went to do the research. And there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and I'd like to clear those up. I knew about the early history of it because I wrote the Wisconsin Central in Illinois. And as many of you know, the Wisconsin Central built what became the B&O CT. But due to depressions and this and that, it ended up, the B&O ended up buying it. So I already had a lot of the information, and I like a challenge, and this was a challenge. This is cover of the Wisconsin Central and Illinois book, and this is a cover of the B&O CT book. I love this painting. It's by a local Chicago artist, Charles Smith, and it was really hard. Henry Freeman showed me the photo, and I said, I love that. I got to have that for the cover. And he didn't have any information on how to contact the artist. So it took me a lot of searching on the internet. Finally, I was able to find, and Charles Smith is sort of a very common name. And you would not believe how many Charles Smiths there are in Chicago. And there are even several Charles Smith artists in Chicago. So it took a while to track him down, but I did, told him what I wanted to do. He graciously let me use the photo. So that's the story behind the cover photo. How to start. Obviously, we start at the very beginning and work forward. And I used my previous book as the beginning and subtracted what wasn't relevant and added more information. And basically, in a book, I want to answer the questions: why it was built, who built it, obviously when it was built, and what outside circumstances contributed to its success or failure. And that's a very important thing, because the economic activity or depressions and everything come into factor with the railroads, as you very well know. This is a map, obviously, of the Baltimore and Ohio, and when they first came to Chicago in the early 1870s. And here's an ad for the B&O. The B&O came in on the Illinois Central tracks. However, they could not use the Illinois Central Depot because it was shared with the Michigan Central, and Vanderbilt, who owned the Michigan Central, was definitely against the B&O. So the B&O, this is the exposition building, and this was built in the 1870s, and I consider it a modern or a forerunner to McCormick Place because it was built to do expositions, which is why they call it the Interstate Exposition Building. And when they weren't doing expositions in the winter, they made it into a huge ice skating rink. But anyway, at the rear of the building was a place where the B&O could build a little station. So here's a station at the rear, the back corner of this exposition building. And that, for many years until they started to use Grand Central Station, that was their depot in Chicago. When they came to Chicago, they built car shops. And here's a picture of the car, the evaluation photos. And to clean them up somewhat, brighten them, they're photos. The photographer for the when they did the ICC evaluations, they weren't professionals by any means, but they used these photos to illustrate what they were evaluating. So anyway, here's the car shops in South Chicago. A gentleman here and one over here. Okay, research. A history book is only as good as the research. And I tried to find as many sources as possible. And a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I read all the major Chicago newspapers at the time on microfilm. I probably read about 1,000 reels of microfilm over the years. I also read all the trade journals, and back when I did this, the internet wasn't really good for research. It was, it was a while ago. So I would just go to the library and page by page by page and scan the page. If I saw something that I found interesting, I put a little slip of paper there, and then when I got enough, I'd go to the photocopy machine, make photocopies. And that's the way I like to do research. That way you don't miss anything. If you do a keyword search or anything, you might get what you're looking for, but you don't get what's going on around, you know, or other things. Like I say, I don't use digital copies or keyword searches, and most of the research was in libraries or historical societies. The Newberry Library, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water. The Newberry Library is in Chicago, and they have an excellent map collection. And you can take pictures of the maps. They turn out pretty good. Here's a couple of pictures. But this little map, I took a picture, and it had the South Chicago Hotel, and I really loved this image. So I was able to clean it up a bit and use it in the book, and this is the way it appeared in the book. B&O Chicago. This is a library. I mean, not a career library. And I want to just give you a little information. Now, they say when you're out rail fanning to take a picture of it because you never know when it's not going to be there. Well, the same thing happens in libraries. And this is a portion of the shelves. You can see all the railroad journals, and they had shelves and shelves and shelves of these. And fortunately, I was able to get before this happened. I went there one day, and I noticed that they were boxing up all the books. And I got really concerned, and I went downstairs and said, what's going on? Where are all the books going? And they were all being shipped to long-term storage. So as you can see, empty shelves. So if you know where something's at a library, it's a good idea to go there and get what you need before it's gone. This is some of my own resources, some of the books I've been able to get and buy mainly on eBay and that. So I use some of those sources too. Straightening of the Chicago River was very important. Railway passenger terminal problem at Chicago, that was a constant problem for the owners of Grand Central. And then the Chicago and Northern Pacific foreclosure, which took up a part of the book too. Like I said, I moved from Chicago to my research area, and all these binders are full of photos or photocopies, along with I have a drawer. And as you can see, it's arranged by year. I take a photocopy of some interesting fact and file it by year in these drawers and use that for my research. One of the other things in research is, like I said, I looked at a lot of different microfilms, and I learned that this is from the Chicago Tribune, and it's on microfilm, and you can take this image and you can get, if you clean it up, you can get a fairly good representation, good enough for the book. I mean, it's not anything that you would expect to see in a brand new photo, but it's a representative of what people would see when they were reading the Chicago Tribune in 1893. Here's a few other things. This is before and then after I cleaned it up. And you can see it removes a lot of the little spots and all that stuff. It's time consuming, but it's well worth it. I also do this was given to me by Nick Fry. This was the original photo, and I was able to clean up something like this. This was the train shed here, and illustrate the tower. And this is the Capitol.
David, could you turn
Yes.
off your video, because your bandwidth, your voice is breaking up because the bandwidth is not good enough.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop this show because I can't get to it on the.
Okay, don't stop the show. That's fine. We'll have to continue.
All right.
That's
All right. Anyway, like I said, I did a lot of research. Everybody recognizes this. I spent a couple of days in your beautiful archives, and everybody was very accommodating, and I want to thank you. And what I did is I just worked like a madman and took pictures of as much things as I could to use to take photocopies of all the drivers. So I just took pictures, and now I can print it out. This is the Sioux Line archives, just for different archives. Same atmosphere, a lot of older gentlemen lounging around, talking and getting some work done. This is the Lake States Historical Association archives in Baraboo. This is a brand new facility. The building was built specifically for them. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy archives are back here. Okay, besides words, what else do you need for the book? You need photos, maps, diagrams, scanned images, manuals I used, documents from the railroads, and I always like to look at court cases, because if you can find the court case, it's very concisely, but in legalese terms, but it tells you exactly what's going on. How I write. I don't use cards to have an idea of how the book is going to progress as I write. I just start writing from the date I want to start. I record all the facts in chronological order. I look for something interesting and expand it to break up the monotony, if you may, of the story. And it's usually a person, place, or thing. So I just work from the beginning, and then I assemble my thoughts and notes as I'm moving along. And I kind of let the facts determine where the book is going to go. Here's a couple of gentlemen who were very instrumental in the railroad. Edward Harriman, obviously Daniel Willard, and Frank Batchelder, who was the president of the B&O CT for many years. I found timetables in the Chicago Tribune. Once you clean it up, and it makes a very nice addition to the book. Maps are very important. Here's the Calumet region, South Chicago here. B&O tracks are along here. Once again, another map. This is the B&O CT. This is Chicago and Western Indiana here. As you can see, this map was not, it did not continue up into, this would be near Evanston. So it was kind of you have to be careful with maps as they don't always are accurate. I go to the Chicago and Calumet Terminal Railroad engine. Stock certificate. Chicago Terminal Transfer Railroad was the reorganized Chicago and Northern Pacific. After it went bankrupt, it was purchased by the Baltimore in Ohio and became the B&O CT. More maps. Here's Grand Central and the way they cross the river. Here's Grand Central once again, and coming in on the west, or from the west side, going east. This was the extension. This is the line that was built to Mayfair that was never used and torn up. And this was the extension down to Chicago Heights and the Chicago Heights Depot. The Chicago Heights extension, and one of the depots was Phoenix. And I didn't know where Phoenix was. It's now part of Harvey, but you can see Phoenix is right here. Some of the topics I covered: track elevation. This was a very major problem for all the railroads in Chicago, elevating their tracks. River straightening. This affected the B&O more than any other railroad. Signal systems, the Chicago plan, which I alluded to earlier, which was a plan to eliminate all the Chicago depots and put all the railroads into one master depot, which obviously never happened. Here's the route to the World's Fair, kind of a roundabout way to get to the World's Fair. This is Cicero. When the railroad was owned by the Northern Pacific, they were going to build car shops here. And here's the main line right here. And then this is the industrial trackage that's still part of the railroad now. This part here. This part was all taken out. Oops. I'm sorry. I also dealt with them taking up tracks. Here's the alderman ready to help with tearing up these tracks of what was the dummy line. The people wanted the tracks out of the streets, and for years and years they fought. And once their ordinance lapsed, it was revoked. And then here's Alderman Scully ready to oversee them tearing up the tracks of the Harlem Division. When the B&O began to use Grand Central, they needed a way to get there. And this is how they did it, kind of a roundabout way. They built this little connecting railroad here, and then up to here. And here's a different version of it. A very interesting story. This is a track elevation map, and the different colors show the different track elevations done at the time. This is the B&O CT here. It's called the Chicago Terminal and Transfer in the map. The B&O is down here. But one chapter of the book is on track elevation. Chicago plan of improvements. They were going to make a massive depot down here. And one of the things, or one of the features of this, is they wanted to straighten the Chicago River. The Chicago River made this turn here, and then came back up. They wanted to straighten from here to here, which they did. And it mainly affected the B&O CT, which was right here. This is a new channel, and this showed the value of the lands and who owned them. Just more the phases involved in straightening the river. Here's the B&O CT here. Another more map showing the stages involved. And here is a picture of the new bridge, the new B&O CT bridge, and the old airline bridge. And if you notice, they built the bridge on land. There's no, the channel has not been built yet. And this bridge needed to be disassembled and moved to next to this bridge. And here's the signal, or the control tower for both bridges. And here's a very interesting photo. Here's the bridge here. And this is the B&O CTR. And if you notice, it was an island with the, here's the new channel, here's the old channel. And this would be all filled in. And this bridge would be moved, or no, this is in position, I'm sorry. And when they straightened the river, they also decided to elevate the tracks. And in this complicated track arrangement here, which meant that they had to raise the B&O CT bridge to the correct height. And this just shows the steps involved in raising the bridge. It's easier to read it in the book than for me to explain it. Here's a photo of a train leaving over the temporary track work, which will be, this was filled in then. I also talked about Bar Yard. Here's Bar Yard on the B&O CT. Relocation. When the expressway was through, it meant that the Chicago Roaring Elgin, Chicago Great Western, and the B&O CT and the Chicago Transit Authority all had to be relocated in this area here. So here's a photo of a Soo Line train up on the original grade, and down here they're building what would become the Eisenhower Expressway. At that time it was the Congress extension. And here is the completed expressway here, the CTA here, and the B&O CT here. Well, when I wrote the book, I was originally going to end it, and that was kind of it. But I got all these fantastic photos, and I didn't know how to use them. And I didn't want to have a photo gallery in the middle of the book because it kind of breaks the book up. So I found 2 inspection trips from information that Henry had given me for B&O officials in 1952 and 1955. So I copied these inspection trips in the book, and I used the photos to depict what they may have seen traveling in these inspection trips. So here we have a a train leaving the Grand Central, crossing the bridge. Here's another train leaving Grand Central. Here's a line switcher, placarded for B&O Grand Central. Here's a B&O CT switcher moving a Soo Line car. Another B&O CT switcher. This was actually a fan trip of the 5555 before it was renumbered. And you can see the nice shiny bell, and they really spiffed the engine up for this fan trip. Here's inside the depot, the cap here, and this is a Barami Shrine Special from Baltimore. That's what this emblem is, and that was parked in the depot. Here's Bar Yard and the coaling tower. And this was the route they took on one of these inspection trips. I highlighted in yellow. So you started here, came down this to Bar Yard, and then over to East Chicago and to Pine. I also, thanks to Henry, gave me the 1935 Form 6, which I'll show you what it is. Industry maps, B&O CT industry maps, a Chicago training manual. I had someone assemble a steam locomotive roster for me, which was quite a task. He did a very good job. And this is an all-time roster of all the locomotives that were used by the various predecessor lines. There's also bibliography and an index. This is the Form 35. It's kind of, might not be able to read it, but anyway, it's just shows the president and law department. Just, I don't know, I find this stuff interesting. Industry matters, Grand Central and Cicero branch. I also put this in. This is all the sidings and the car capacity for at each industry of the entire system. Who to thank? I want to thank Charles Statz, who I dedicated the book to, who is a wealth of information on the Chicago and Northern Pacific. I could not have done this without Henry Freeman and Nick Fry, who, I mean, those guys were great to work with, very supportive, very accommodating, and said, Dave, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Okay. Bert Mall, John Schweikart, and Phil Weibler are 3 Chicago area photographers. Phil Weibler has won awards for his photography. John Schweikart wrote a number of books about rail fanning in Chicago, St. Louis, etc. And Bert Mall was able to get up into Roby Street when he was younger and take some great pictures. But anyway, a lot of these pictures have never been seen before. So I'm thankful for these gentlemen. And then Scott Griffith, who gave me thousands of photographic images to choose from. He'd been collecting images of the B&O CT for a number of years, and some of them were really, really wonderful to use. Okay, how long did it take? I started on a Chicago Terminal and Beltlines book after I finished my Wisconsin Central and Illinois book back in 2010. Wisconsin Central book took me 12 years. So this is 2020, so the B&O CT only took 10 years. I wrote 14 chapters of the Chicago Terminal and Beltlines book and realized it would be too big. I stopped working on that, wrote and published Pickle and Vinegar Makers of Chicago in 2015. And then I concentrated on the B&O CT book shortly after and finished it. I self-published it. There's a number of reasons. I wanted to maintain creative control. This time I not only wrote the book, I did the entire layout myself, learning the software as I went along. I self-published because I think a lot of railroad books are priced ridiculously high. I just can't see why people charge $75 or $80 or $100 for a 250 page railroad book. So I wanted my book to be inexpensive, high quality, but I'm not trying to make a ton of money on this. I'm just trying to recoup my cost and use it for my next book projects. My book project, which is either going to be the Chicago Milk Shed, which is about the milk industry in Chicago, or the Chicago and Western Indiana Railroad history. Ordering information, it'll be available at the company store, direct from me. Here's my email. I also have I share an email or a website page, and you can get information about the book here. The cover again, contents with the chapters. As you can see, it's 323 pages. And ordering information. And with that, I am finished, and I'll see if I can turn this off.
Well, thank you very much, David, for the introduction and how you wrote your book.
Okay. I'll turn my mic off. So, the video's off. Okay.
Okay. And we certainly appreciate it, and we all look forward to purchasing a copy of your book.
Okay.
Again, we didn't have any questions, which I was expecting, because our knowledge, most knowledge of the B&O, many of us don't have a great knowledge of the B&O CT. We're aware of it. We had our Chicago convention a number of years ago, and visited many of the sites that still today don't exist, like the 75th Street Tower. So, and again, thank you very much. And I guess it's time to move on to